I thought we already started. Yeah, you already started. We're going, right?
the punch thing is in there now. It's official.
We started today's
This
podcast
guy
talking
abuses
about
his people.
Talking about my abuse of Ron Eccles and punching him if he uses notes for our podcast today. I think it's always
or if I have onions ever around here again.
I do not believe in onions. It's interesting though. I actually over the years I have gotten more used to onions than I would some other veggies because like in salsas and in hot sauce and in certain things, being married to a Latina, there is absolutely no chance that I could live life without a little bit of onion in it. So that has been something that, speaking of wives, right? You were talking about your wife, right? Make sure that you, actually, she'd rather you be a little less clean shaven.
Yeah, she likes the scruff on my face every once in a while, and it drives me nuts because I've always kept clean shave. Well, I used to have hair at one point. I know it's hard to believe, but now I keep my head shaved most every day in my face. And by the way, I can't pull off what you can pull off on your face. I can't do it.
You can't grow.
No, it looks bad. And yet I have 5 children, and I have one biologic son, one son that didn't come from my loins, and my son who's biologic.
I wonder when you talked to your son, you said, "How does it feel to come from my loins?"
Well, yeah. Well, my younger son Pat is from Ecuador, and he grows like a cheesy kind of goatee. But my son Luke has got this big, thick red beard. The name of his company is Red Bearded Marketing. And I'm like, you didn't get that from me. You get the red, but not the thickness of that beard.
It's interesting, like with my own kids, right? Like trying to explain to them sperm, egg, right? And those kind of things. Because like it's amazing how much they want to know at 7 or 8 years old. And so, you know, telling your son he comes from your balls is not exactly... Like him trying to figure that out, mentally is like, and he thinks you're just kidding, right? But
yeah, it was simpler when I was growing up. Was the stork? It brought you and dropped you off.
So 4th of July, right, for me is always a great celebration. A big shout out for all of you in the chat box. Tell Amy Vaughn, my great, incredible business partner, happy birthday. July 3rd is always her birthday, and she kicks major ass. And one of the reasons we're able to do all the great stuff that we give and share with people is Amy. So give her a big shout out in the chat box. And back to the women for a minute, right? So for me, my wife says, if you don't keep a goatee, even though when we married, I was very clean shaven, right? She would not like it. And I think as a man, I think pretty much she's the only one that has to like looking at me every single day. Amen. So I will do whatever facial hair she asks. So for the women out there, what do you prefer? Facial hair, no facial hair? Do you prefer hair on the head or no hair on the head? What is the preference for all of you out there? So let's get into some modern events that are going on here in America. Billionaires going into a submarine and dying. I mean, what are your thoughts? I think maybe there's a space program we don't know about that now them with Kobe Bryant and a few others are on another planet. But, that's, some pretty strong, crazy out there, far-reaching conspiracy theory stuff. But maybe that's the belief that people could still be alive, but who knows? What are your thoughts on the whole thing?
If you take me back into my 20s and 30s, 40s, conspiracy theorists just turn me off. I never, ever thought about some of the stuff people come up with. As a matter of fact, at an event you and I were at a long time ago, there was a guy there, nice guy, really smart, but he had, the chemtrails, all this different stuff, and I would just laugh at him. Now I don't laugh so much anymore because there's a lot of things that I used to think were just conspiracies that came to be true. Now, again, there's the aliens and stuff like that, but there's a lot of things I think we should question that I didn't used to question and we should question, but, particularly with our government and some of the things
I think it's kind of fun. Like, I don't live my life and dive down the trail with conspiracy theories, but sometimes I think it's kind of fun, right?
Can be.
Yeah. When you look at, the founder of Zappos is, what is his name?
Tony.
Yeah, Tony, who's an incredible man that, I got a chance to spend some time with the Mavericks organization and, died,
Tony Hsieh, yeah.
And, when billionaires die, I always think of, like, who'd they piss off, right? Because, like in my world, like those are the people that, like, things like mechanical failures on a submarine probably shouldn't exist because they can go to space.
Yeah. Well, I watched, not too long ago, I saw that, they have this other thing you can invest a lot of money, it costs a lot, and it's like a balloon, essentially, that takes you into the atmosphere, like way up. And
I'd be a no-go on that one.
Yeah.
I'm not a height guy. I mean, can I handle it to an extent? absolutely. I don't get freaked out on planes or anything, but like, and I've done rope courses up 3-4 stories, but like I'm not a lover of heights. Is the way I would put it.
I had a great fear of heights growing up, and I still don't like getting near the edge of anything. Planes, I'm okay because I feel safe, but going up that high in a capsule headed by a balloon, I know they got some backup systems in there, but after watching what happened in a recent catastrophe where we lose 5 people going down to look at the Titanic, I'm like, I can just watch the movie.
I mean, and I think I might have done that, right? Like if it was an offer and like it was, affordable, reasonable amount of money, thinking about getting on a submarine to go see something pretty cool under the ocean sounds exciting, sounds fascinating to me, right? So, but also I think like they were on like basically in a room like this size, going down there and oh no, was it a big submarine? I heard it was a little tiny.
It's even smaller than
smaller,
this room.
much smaller, right?
Yeah.
And that part I probably wouldn't have been as big a fan of, but I also would never want to be the first one. Right, I'm okay with that, right? Some people say, like, why do you think people climb Mount Everest? Because it's there, right? But they're not the first ones to climb Mount Everest, right?
That's right.
Why do we go to the moon? Because it's there, right? But that goes down to, like, some other thoughts with, 4th of July and what America is and, like, some different things I've thought about recently. I wanted to get your opinion on it. Like, in my opinion, like, the limitations of the mind or limitations of thought, right, hold back society. And if we can spend $1 trillion during the pandemic and we can spend another $1 trillion during the pandemic on feeding people and supplying people, which I'm all for, right? Why can't we spend, $2 trillion on exploring space? Or why can't we spend $2 trillion on other things that could really advance, right, us as a country or advance us as a civilization? Because if we're going to go and print money, why not print money to do things that nobody's ever done before, to do incredible, powerful things? What do you think about that?
I've lived my entire life.
Not that I love printing money. I don't love it, but at the same time, if we're going to do it, then let's do it for some pretty amazing reasons.
Yeah, I've loved studying and listening to the visionaries, people way ahead of their time, because they were laughed at, scoffed, sometimes ridiculed by other people, and then all of a sudden later on, they were able to do something extraordinary and break all the rules. I know there's been books written on this, but I love how today, look at where we're at right now. As far as civilization is known, my lifetime, the advances have been astronomical. And even in just the last year with AI coming into play, it's changing everything. And the next year, it's going to even go way off the charts as to how far we're going to be able to do things that we never were able to do before.
Yeah, and I think it's this interesting dynamic, right? Because there's AI and there's the advancement of civilization, right? But then there's back to the most basic of needs, right? The most basic of concepts. Like for me, when we decided to go back in real estate, like there's all these people get fancy, right, with different things. And like one of the things is like in the office industry right now, they're in for a crash, right? If not a crash, I would say a big price correction.
Yeah, big correction.
Yeah, sometimes I don't really think in commercial real estate a crash can happen because, like, as I've been doing these recent, like, press interviews and stuff, right? Commercial real estate, everybody's on commercial real estate trail, and I just think people always pay money for money. Like at the end of the day, like there's certain things like you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You look at different things. There's certain things people will always do, always need, always have, and I think money people will always pay for. And the wealthy will always pay for cash flow, right? They'll always pay for income. And the only thing that they know will always exist no matter what on this planet is real estate. There's no company, no business, no stock that they can guarantee will exist forever. Even though our government has backed some different things in different ways. But people will always pay, for money. They'll always pay for income. They'll always pay for cash. It's like one of the first mentors I ever listened to. They said, Dutch, if you make other people money, you will always make money. And I've always printed that like in my whole history. Like I think in business, part of my old philosophy is always, well, if I can put people in a good place, if I can put people in a satisfaction place, if I can make people money, I will always be able to build a business down in my core. What are your thoughts on that? Like you've been in real estate a long time. Do you think a correction? Do you think people always, like me, I don't think there can ever be a full crash in commercial real estate because I think people always pay for money.
Yeah, I think what you're describing is a lot of people who might be listening to us might not quite understand that you get to a certain point in life and you realize that trading time for dollars doesn't work.
No.
It'll never get you wealthy. In fact, I love, because I've obviously was working with the book Money Shackles before it came out, and I just love how you rethink the way money works. And so we're diving into a subject right now is where we're thinking at a certain level. And I love the way you think because it makes me think even more. If people are out there listening right now and you don't understand that to get your money working for you should be the goal. And then real estate should be one of the biggest and probably most important vehicles you should be thinking about to make that money work. Because listen, the majority of wealthy people in the United States either develop their wealth or hold their wealth in real estate. So asking these questions, I think, is a critical topic right now that people should be thinking, well, right now people are talking about the impending change in the commercial real estate, particularly office space. But you're going beyond that. You're looking at what is the principle behind it. And that's really important. Like wealthy people want to take their money and exchange it for something that they can get in return, cash flow. So they take a chunk of money, they put it in something, and they get cash flow on a regular basis. And they just continue to do that over and over again. You talk about this concept all the time of recycling your money. I mean, I'm here in the office and I hear it on the TV all the time. And it just ingrains in my head that if the average person listening to this podcast would read Money Shackles, would begin to watch and listen to our podcasts, I think it would reprogram the way they consider how money works and be able to do something different than they've done before. Because that's the whole principle. That you wrote the book Money Shackles to free people. And I think that's extraordinarily powerful.
Appreciate that. I think this relationship with money is something that like some people spend more time on than others. I think some people have a positive relationship with money. Some have a negative relationship with money. Sometimes you'll hear Steve like money has no color, but the color is green. And in the digital world, it'll have less color, right? And the reality is, it's like, for me, it's like, what is money? And, money's an energy source. And in life, we have lots of energy sources, right? Love is an energy source, right? People that are a part of your life will either fuel you or they will defuel you, right? And money can either be growing and fueling a life that you choose, or money can be this victimization, or it can be this guilt. It can be both for people, and it can be really challenging for people when they start to think about the things. And its reality is, I think in today's modern world, there are people who feel like they're out of control when it comes to money, because they start to think of, well, if the Fed raises interest rates to 5.25, right, which is one of the things that's being talked about right now, if the Fed lowers interest rates, if Fed does this, if Fed does that, right? So the question is like, what is that, and how does that make people feel when they feel like they don't have control of their money?
Yeah. I love listening to the way you're thinking about the future for Americans and the concept of the realized American dream. I love it's a perfect acronym for RADD. But because I grew up in a time where I've watched now over 60 plus years of people struggle, other people thrive, and what is the differences between the two, and the whole concept of understanding how money works as an energy source. Like I would tell people, money is what you exchange for the goods or services you provide. And if you want, it's the value, right? So if you want more value, provide more value in services or goods.
But the part where they like, there's this part of it that's like out here for people that they can't quite. It's like they can't quite understand, right? Interest rates go up, right? There's recession, there's bear markets, there's depressions, there's price corrections, there's market corrections, and there's all this negative stuff, and then there's booming markets, and there's bull markets, and there's these different things, right? And like as investors, making money in a booming market is something you can do. Making money in a bear market you can do. Making money in a recession is something you can do. And I made the most money in my life, right? Coming out of, the 2020 pandemic was the biggest, thing that we did, and that was the time where we could grab market share, right? And it's not whether all of these things haven't already happened. You say 60 years, right? And you look at, it's not whether or not there's going to be a recession, because there is. It's not whether or not there's going to be a bear market, because there is. It's not whether there's going to be a boom again, because there is. So the answer is it's like, well, what do you do? Well, by knowing your history, you know what to do. You know the actions to take, right? And I think so often people are running their lives, they're running their careers, they're running their jobs, and there's like, how many people really have time to study the history of money, right? How many people know that, like, do you know what a fiat currency is, right? Do they know that, we're 50 years past being a fiat currency, which is one of the longest running fiat currencies in the history of the world, right? And so, like, what does that mean? Well, it means that it's happened before. And so now we take action based on what's already happened, helps us predict what we're going to do in the future. But if we wait till it happens again, then you'll be behind the market. And so if you use your history, right, and you use an understanding of what's to come to act, then you'll move before the market moves in a positive way.
Yeah, you're describing. It's so funny that this morning when it was quiet in here, got here early, I shoot some reels for my social media channels, and I talked about to business owners, are you proactive or are you reactive? Because my experience now in years and years of dealing with business owners and non-business owners is that most people, whether it's their finances, their relationships, their health, or even their spiritual life, they're more reactive than they are proactive. And what you're describing right now is the people who, and we'll talk about finances here for a minute and real estate, the people who are proactive are the people who are looking, understanding their cycles. And these cycles are going back as far as you can think of. Sometimes the cycles may take a little bit longer than other times, but there's always a cycle. There's always a height. There's always a depth to it. And you said something really powerful. People who get educated, who will educate themselves, can make money in a bear market, a bull market, or a flat market. And that's, I think, the biggest challenge for most people is that they don't have a belief that that is true. And once they can wrap their head around that, well, there are other people, there are people like you, and you just got done saying at RADD here, one of the greatest scaling up of the business happened during the pandemic, which was catastrophe for a lot of people.
You saw the results in 2022, right? And we're continuing to live and reap those results in 2023, but those actions all happened in 2020.
Yeah, and I think what's really important too, and again, I'm thinking along the lines of, well, how does that position RADD for what's next? And I think it's because you were wise, you looked ahead, you were proactive, the company grew tremendously and has resources to be prepared for what comes next. And I had to learn this lesson.
But that's what investors always want to know. Right?
Yeah.
Investors always want to know. People listening always want to know. They want to know what's next. Like, what's the next action? Like, one of the most common things we're always asked, well, what's the next market you're going to invest into? I was on with, Forbes yesterday in an interview, and they were asking me, well, what other markets are you considering? What other areas are you considering? And it's fascinating because that's modern media, right? They always want to know what's the scary story and what's happening next, right? And they never want to talk about, like, they'll talk all day long about bank failures, but will they go and highlight the 3 banks that are succeeding and winning and doing successful things, right? It's not sexy, right? It doesn't pull in. A car wreck pulls in a lot more people than the normal car that drives down the road every single day successfully. Now, on the other hand, there's also the sexy, right? When the Lamborghini drives down the road, that pulls head, or the Hummer, or the new, if they ever actually come out with the new, Tesla SUV, it'll. I've been on that waiting list for a long time.
I don't know. I saw Amy's BMW, and that thing is pretty
cool.
sharp. I'm a Tesla fan. I love Tesla, but the BMW, I think, kind of brought out the pizzazz for the people who like the stuff in it. I'm a stuff guy.
Well, the thing about Amy is like she has this dynamic way of being treated like an absolute queen, right? And I look at that, it's fascinating because, like, back in the day, like, I go to BMW and I, currently drive, a Navigator, and I get treated decent, but, like, Amy, like, it's like they love her business. Like, they'll come back, they'll call her, they'll tell her when the new model comes in, or like at the, like, shopping mall, like, sometimes the stores will call her for, like, a private showing when they get their new collection and stuff. And I'm like, I know I spend just as much money on things in the world as she does, but, like, man, her ability to be treated, I mean, who doesn't want to be treated that way?
Yeah,
right?
but I got to tell you, I mean,
or maybe I don't see it when I'm treated that way.
Yeah, well, I'm looking. I told you I'm looking for a new car. In fact, I almost called you. I was shopping for a new Lexus. We already got one for my wife, and now my wife says the new one is for her, and I'll get the other one now, which is almost a year old. And so I stopped because they were so busy, they couldn't take my appointment. So I went over to the BMW dealership, and I was going to call you. Go, Dutch, can I have the company credit card? There's like a $117,000 BMW in here. That's the bomb. It was really nice. And
I see, between you and Brent trying to get me to buy him a Hellcat and a Charger and those kind of things, like I'll do a lot. Buying new cars is not something I'll do for some reason. But
I was thinking of you when I was in there, but I forgot where you get talking about cars and the.
So what is it being 4th of July? What's the most truest American car? Like what is the American true car? I mean, to me, like a Ford GT Mustang comes to truth, right? Like that's the one that seems in my mind to come to truth, right? Maybe the Ford versus Ferrari movie comes to mind, right? But like the Ford, like GT, like a Mustang, like, you know, I think of, or like Gone in 60 Seconds, like the Shelby. What is it from the movie? Like the Shelby, he called her Eleanor, right? That to me is always the epitome of what an American car is. But I mean, some people might say a Prius is the epitome. I don't. But
yeah,
what's the epitome of an American car?
I think that really
Prius
changed.
is a Toyota, to be clear.
Yeah.
But
well, I grew up in a generation where I remember my father. They were always Japanese stuff is junk, you know, like especially post World War II. These guys who had those memories from World War II. You know, nothing from those countries were worthwhile. And then I grew up in a generation where I was a little bit confused as to, well, should I buy American or these other cars? And then I read an article years ago about the truth of American cars, like how many of them, the parts come from other parts of the world and how many of them are manufactured in even foreign cars that are put together here in the United States and provide jobs and stuff. So I kind of changed my viewpoint on that. So I'll give you my answer. My answer is went from, I used to be the Porsche 944 guy. I've had Lincoln Continentals, which were awesome. Lexus, I love. And I'm at the point in life now where it's like, if you say, hybrid is my answer. I love hybrids because I literally hate paying for gas. Because again, I've watched gas prices from when we had the odd and even plate numbers back in the 70s because of Man,
you're really old.
I know, it's scary. When, like, you start getting to an age and you start remembering things and people are looking at you like, what? Yeah, out in Harbor, I lived in New Jersey at the time, and people were flying over going, there was oil ships just backed up for miles and miles. They just weren't letting them in. They were artificially driving the price of gas up, and people were shooting each other in gas lines just waiting to get gas. But gas back then was so cheap. So cheap, and now it's...
I'm more thinking like the nostalgia.
Yeah, the muscle cars. The muscle cars.
Versus of it. But yeah, I mean, like when people... That's why Fast and Furious is so famous, right? Because, you know, certain cars, but in that just as much as the electronic, right, super, you know, road car was just as, you know, a part of that as the, you know, big muscle cars were a part of that. So it's kind of interesting thing. I don't know, like Tesla is an American company making American cars, doing American things, right? And that's kind of fascinating because, you know, I don't know that every American, when they think of Elon Musk, that's an American, but that's a real American, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that.
In different ways, you know, and you know, a lot of his political statements and his political missions are very, you know, pro-American and very, you know, pro-world in some ways, but also pro-American. Like how many people made the decisions, right, during Ukraine, Russia, right, to make different decisions. Like he had to make some difficult decisions. And like when I say billionaires die in a submarine, right? Like when those guys got to make some of those crazy decisions at the high level, I don't know that everybody wants to. Like I never want to have to make the decisions a president has to make, right? Yeah. And like you see, like I've been watching the show For All Mankind on Apple, right? And it's, you know, about like what if the space race never ended? What if we had just continued to run at space like aggressively, continuously? What if we had put, instead of only having ever been to the moon once, we had put a space station on the moon, a colony on the moon and stuff? And like that's interesting because probably Elon Musk is the most largest, fastest, you know, person, you know, pushing in that direction and stuff.
Yeah, Elon Musk is an innovator. If you've never read about this guy, he's worthwhile. No matter what side of the political spectrum you think he's on or you're on, he's worthwhile reading up on. He's I just think about what this man has been able to do, and the way he thinks into the future is just extraordinary. And again, and I'm going to say, I know that you say, well, I'm not an Elon Musk, but you think into the future, which is really beneficial to America. I mean, let's go back to Independence Day, right? Independence Day just passed, but what is
good movie too?
Yeah, it's a great movie. But what does it mean
I
to?
don't know about the sequel.
Is the first one was better. The what does it mean for Americans? And now that we have RADD America, why is that so passionate for you? And you've really fired me up because I would have never even thought of that. But and I'll throw out another statistic that I heard this morning that blew my mind was that patriotism in the United States is at an all-time low of 39%.
I see, because I live in such a world with, the special operations wounded warriors, task force, like with the charities we support and believe in. Like I live in that world so much. My concept of an American not believing in America is like,
Nobody liking chocolate.
Jump off a bridge, right? like this doesn't mean we're a perfect country, right? But no country in the world is perfect, right?
Nope.
Doesn't mean that we don't have things we got to get better at, right? But like for me, I have admiration, right? And some things would blow people's minds. I have just as much admiration for Reagan as I would Clinton, as I would Obama, as I would Trump, because we survived, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like that's the thing is, it's like you go forward in the future, right? There are people who will hate Biden, there are people who will hate Trump, but like we make it through each four-year cycle. Like they've had to make decisions and consequences. But like to me, I hate politicians, right? That aren't doing, and I hate the fact that I don't feel like Biden will probably do any better job than what Trump did with it if that they don't transition successfully, right? Because that's always was one of the things that I loved when I was growing up is when one president left, another president came in, and they passed the torch, and you could see Obama and Bush being friends. You could see Obama and Bush coming together, right, in some different ways. And so, that's something that I would like to see us, as a country. But in the modern day political sphere, it's tough.
Yeah.
When politicians are getting, indicted, right? When you're primary, like when I think of somebody running for president who's getting indicted by that makes me think of a third world country.
Yeah.
But there's parts of America that are very first world, but there's parts of America that are very third world. And people don't realize, like, some of our ghettos here in America are scary.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have the same third world of poverty that we once did, right? But at the same time, there are still many neighborhoods in America where people are on the streets with needles in their arms, or people, homeless, cities. There are homeless cities at this point, homeless towns that exist in a modern world, and there are children who don't get to eat, the way they should be allowed to eat, every single day. And so, like that part of it is where the focus should be, not on the divide, because that's what our enemies want.
Yeah.
That's what the Chinese want, right? That's what communists want, right? Is they want to divide American against American, and they'll do everything in their power to be able to do it.
Yeah. Now, see, I'll say this up front, so I'm not unclear. I'm conservative by nature, but I love to have an open mind to listen to people for rational thinking. And I heard this morning was that 60+% of Republicans are patriotic. Mm-hmm. And I think it's under 20%, maybe in the teens, of Democrats are patriotic. And I don't want to cast aspersions on anybody. All I know is that if you're an American and you live here, if you don't like it, you should go spend a year or so in Africa or in Venezuela. And they're two different. One's a socialist or a communist country. Go check out some other parts of the world and see how much
Americans
like
don't know what it's like to walk around every day in pure fear, right? And yes, we've had shootings, right, here in our country, but there are people all over the world who walk away every single day worried they're going to step in an IED, worried they're going to be a part of, another type of terrorist attack, right? And it's not that we're without danger here, right, in our country, which I hate, right? I mean, I will tell you, like, one of the scariest moments of my life was, we were in downtown Tampa with me and two of our team, right? And, there was, some loud booming that sounded like gunshots going on, and people started to scatter. I saw a pregnant woman fall on the ground as she started to scatter and run, right? And scary moment, and it ended up being a pirate ship that went by for, what do they call that here? Gasparilla, yeah. Gasparilla, right? But it was loud booming. I mean, I've been to gun range, right? In the last month, I've been to plenty of gun ranges. I know what guns sound like, right? And it was boom, boom, and there was like boom, 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 and I said, that's gunshots, and I'm looking at where's my vehicle, where's the most safest place, right? What are the situations? Yeah, there was two. What scared us more than anything, there was two police vehicles, unmarked police vehicles that went by before the pirate ship at like 40, 50 miles an hour in a downtown street, right? And like they went by quick with just the lights on, no real sirens, right? And like it just was one of those moments where, you know, you lived in fear. But you know what I saw in that moment is I saw people looking out for other people, right? And as people scattered, you know, people were looking out for different people. I know, you know, Aaron, you know, my EA was like getting people into the kitchen behind. You know, this all happens in 30 seconds or less.
Yeah, you don't have time to think it through. You're reacting.
But do I live in that every day of my life? No.
Yeah.
Right? Do I travel around this country living in that every day of my life? No. And we are, you know, an uninvaded, right, fairly safe country. But it's not that there's not demons that are out there, right? Who believe America, right, is the demon, right? And it's not that there's not out there with, you know, specific plans to overthrow capitalism or overthrow democracy, overthrow freedom, right? The way we have it. And so, like, that's what I count my blessings every day. And that's why I believe this is the greatest country in the world, because we have a freedom. I've gone from two addicted parents from growing up in poor, you know, rough neighborhoods. You know, I didn't grow up in south side of Chicago. I didn't grow up in North Philly. I didn't grow up in you know, certain parts of you know, LA. But I did grow up, you know, not in the greatest of situations, you know. My parents, you know, living on my own at 16 and my parents, you know, have both having been dead a really long time, but I've been able to build an empire, you know, and so like we have the ability to do that. And I've been able to do it without stepping on people. I've been able to do it without screwing people over. I've been able to do it with lifting people up, right? And I didn't have to kill anyone, right, to be able to do it. And like, but that's, you know, in a lot of parts of the world, that's
how you get ahead.
Very much a reality.
Yeah. But I'm going to go back, swing back to the question of Independence Day, and think about the decline in my lifetime, the decline of patriotism. When I heard those statistics this morning, it bothered me, because I think about all the wonderful things and the opportunities we have. I spoke with a woman the other day from another country, and again, my wife is from another country. And I hear these people come out of other situations and they come to America and they go, you have no idea how good you have it here. They love this country. The woman I spoke to the other day is from Iran, and she's now a chemical engineer. She came here and she had to make it as a single woman with a child, and she has been able to rise up and has a really good income and a good life right now because of the land of opportunity. And the thing that I was unaware for so many years was because I'm not a farmer, and I've never owned a farm, and, you know, driven past farms, and obviously I enjoy the food that comes from farms, but I never realized that other countries, and I'm going to say China, and I want to say respect to the Chinese people, who I heard are
and I love
incredible
Chinese Americans.
people.
We have some incredible Chinese Americans that work at RADD. We have incredible Chinese Americans that have invested with RADD, right? So it's not that. It's
a communist government
CCP,
there.
right? And
because one of my son's best friends spent 2 years over there, and he said they're the nicest people in the world. He said the government's the most evil he's ever met. And they got a plan.
The 2049 plan.
To destroy America. And I look at that and I go, is patriotism down because of this agenda other countries have to take us down? And I think that I'm not a conspiracy theorist, except I believe that to be true. Mm-hmm. And I can look at all the factors going on, and then I see what RADD's doing with RADD America. And I'm like, that's what we need more of.
Well, I you know, you have space, right? And we talk about space a lot, right? But the reality is like we can't never get to space if we don't take care of what we have here.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't go and explore the universe if what here isn't great, right? I mean, the fastest way to us to explore the universe, right, is for the world to be at peace, right? The fastest way for us to explore the universe is for the world to let go of, right, trying to take each other down, right? And I'm very much a pro-American, you know, nationalistic type of person. That I love this country, and so I love the fact that we have some of the most bountiful, fruitful land, right, in the entire world. And like anybody who gets on a plane, look out your windows, you'll realize there's more land than you ever imagined, but there's also a very large shortage of good soil, of good farming, of good food production. And like for me, I love what pure food is. And now we're being pushed to lab meat, right? And they want to call it synthetic beef.
That's scary.
And the fact that 3 restaurants in California, you know, decided to serve, you know, synthetic beef, and it's a fad, right? But did nobody learn from GMOs?
Yeah.
Right? Did nobody learn from the bleaching of wheat and what that did with celiacs and what that did with gluten, what that has done to the health, what that did with obesity in America, and what
fructose corn syrup, sugar,
and all the genetically modified stuff. And so to me, I feel like lab meat is absolutely a genetically created modified type of thing that I love that our farmland is beautiful here. And I love that it can produce income, and I love that it can produce bounty. But also imagine, our food supply in labs would be controlled by the people who own the labs, not controlled by everyday Americans, American farmers. And so, when we started investing in farmland when the pandemic hit, it made me feel like I was doing something with real impact.
Yeah, when I first heard about you doing that, when I was first exposed to what you had done over the years that we were apart, we knew each other for many years, shared stages, did a whole lot of work together, and then we didn't see each other for a bunch of years. And then all of a sudden I run into you, and you're like, you built this incredible company built around some fabulous principles. And then you took it to a whole new level when you said, let's invest in farms in America.
Well, principles are hard, right? And that's what a lot of it's like you hold on to things you believe in, and if you hold on to them to a point, it can destroy you, and if you hold on to them, they can also build you.
Yeah.
Right. And it's fascinating because like the principles that have built our business are really solid, and sometimes some of those principles people think I was a little bit crazy with some of them. Like I know there was times when with our real estate teams are like, we're going to buy the next piece of property, we're going to buy another piece of property, we're going to buy another piece of property, and they're like, Dutch, there's $97,000 in the bank account, and you're going to go buy the next $500,000 piece of property. And the answer was yes. Dutch, there's $800,000 in the company bank account, and you want to go buy a $5 million farm? The answer was yes. Right? It was like, well, it was always one of my principles. We're going to buy another good piece of property. And when I went into farmland, it was one of my principles. Like I didn't care about it being pure bottom line, in the sense it's like I knew that us having farmland was important to the future of our company, and I knew that us having farmland is important to the future of the message within America. And when I started talking about that Americans should be able to own American land and American farmland, and foreign powers and foreign governments and foreign entities and foreign billionaires should not be allowed to own American businesses, and they should not be allowed to own American farmland, right? And when we started pushing that 3-4 years ago, people are like, you're a little out there. It's a little bit far-reaching, but I think now we've seen laws that have passed.
Yeah, states are jumping on board with what you started. And I'm not saying you're the originator of it, but you were way ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there was a lot of other people, putting that message out, but it was out there.
Yeah,
it existed. But we jumped on it, and we put hundreds of thousands of people behind that mission and that message, and now millions of people behind that mission and message. And right, like one of my next big ones, right, as Americans, I think there's still discrimination in America, right? And it's something, that I've been told from time to time that I don't need to poke, the bear within the government or bear within different things about the economic discrimination that I think exists in America. But I believe there's economic discrimination in America. And I believe there is, like, where in the world could we be classified and it not be discriminatory, right? And American government classifies every single American as accredited or non-accredited. They classify them based on what they believe makes someone qualified to make certain investments or non-qualified to make certain investments. And if you are a non-accredited investor, you are limited on what you can and cannot invest into. And if you're accredited, which means you have middle class or above, right, type of income, you can invest in anything who's middle class or lower middle class and below cannot invest into. Right? And that is absolutely saying that we do not, as Americans, all have equal rights. And I never thought I would be the person taking up the gambit to say, hey, this is discriminatory, it's unconstitutional, but for me, it's something I cannot believe in. I don't believe it's American. And I from the time I was a child, like that's the thing. When I was a kid, my brother Brent was serving in the military. And my dad, for all of his screw-ups and all of his different things that he had challenges with, right? My my dad built in me, say, hey, you have freedom because your brother's out there fighting. You have freedom to go do anything you want in this world because we are all born equal, right, in this country, and we are not all born equal in this country, right? And that's a part that is a challenging to me. And there will never be a time where all people are born equal, right? That's something people will have to accept, right? And my kids are not born equal to some other kids, right? But does that mean that they're going to win more in life or have a better life? That's only a maybe, right? Because someone born with wealth and abundance just as much can screw up their lives, and it can screw them up just as much as someone born poor with parents with addictions like I was can screw up their lives, right? And so the development and the ability for an American to create their American dream, to create their own life, is reality. But for there to be any government policy that stands in the way of that to me is bullshit. And that's also, one of my challenges. Like I'm not left or right in a lot of ways because I think most Americans run right down the freaking middle, right? And there are absolutely beliefs that I have that are conservative economically. There are absolutely beliefs that I have that are conservative, faith-wise, right, for myself. But medical rights, vaccination, not vaccination, right? I have beliefs in that. But typically that's been a left issue, but now it's a right issue, right? But then there's other stuff that I believe that when people need help, they should get help. I believe when people are in school, for one American to have access to education and another American not to have access to the same education, I kind of think that that's bullshit, because then you're limiting the ability, right, for the pursuit of happiness, the pursuit of economics. And so I think that's a little bit more of a left belief, right? Yeah. But at the end of the day, I go back to economics and I go back to money, and that's probably where my conservative values lie more because of what I believe is right and wrong when it comes to finances.
Yeah, it's really funny because I find myself
But I also don't like paying taxes, but I pay them, and I pay them, because I believe I don't like paying more taxes than I'm supposed to.
Right, unfair
taxes.
Unfair
right?
taxes.
I utilize the tax code very effectively. Yep. Right. I heard another thought leader said, the goal of every wealthy person is to pay no taxes. That's never been my goal. I think I pay a lot in taxes.
I think Thurgood Marshall, one of the early Supreme Justices, I think it was him that said that every American's obligation is to pay as little taxes legally as possible. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really brilliant, coming from the highest legislative land or organization in the land. And I'm like, well, then Americans should look at how do we take opportunity for the laws that are already in place so we can gather more and put more away for our families and our future. And again, that goes right back to the subject you're talking about. It's not a left or right issue. It's about, is it a fair issue?
See, America is not a left or right issue. That's the thing that a lot of people get into. America is America, right? Our country is our country, right? Our soldiers don't go out there and say, I'm going to fight for the Democrats or I'm going to go fight for the Republicans. Yep. Our soldiers go out there and fight for this country. They fight for the man and woman next to them, right? They fight for the freedom of the kids that are going to elementary school every single day or going, to church every single day, that are going to, whatever, a kid is doing, right? That's the freedom, our warriors fight for.
Yeah. I find in America today that the news media, social media seems to more drive the narrative and the thought process, whereas it takes visionaries like the Elon Musks of the world, Tony Hsieh's of the world, the Dutch Mendenhalls, the Amy Vaughns, the people who are looking and saying, how can we make a positive difference? You brought up a subject before that's really important, and that is in the media, there's a slogan, I learned it from Kristen White, if it bleeds, it leads, which means people are more tuning into the things that are, let's say, negative, because it catches our attention. But there are companies and people that are focused on, well, how can we make a difference? How can we make things better? And that's what RADD's about. That's why I love this company.
And when we lose those people, though, sometimes, right? It's like the Steve Jobs, the Tony Hsieh's, yeah. Right? Like I wasn't into Steve Jobs' journey as much until after he died, right? Yeah. I didn't know about him. I knew he ran Apple. I knew he was the visionary, the thought leader behind it, but I didn't know, right? With Tony Hsieh, like I was deep into his methodology and into his story and how he ran and operated a company and a business. And I'd have to absolutely say, like, I followed closely, right, the rise of Zappos. I followed the closely of different things, and a lot of the culture and the things I wanted to build at RADD were like congruent with what Tony's philosophies were. Like I went and took the tours of their offices and their businesses and those kind of things, right? And like modeling for me in business is always critical, right? And so yeah, like when they disappeared, I watched BlackBerry recently. It's a new movie that came out, and have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
Not yet. So BlackBerry, like you and I know, like it was kind of before my like business entrepreneurial side of life, right? But BlackBerry, man, it went to the moon and back in a very pretty short window, right? And it was the only truly American made, American manufactured, American part phone at one point in time. And I'm like, man, the disappearance of BlackBerry was the disappearance of an American made phone. And that kind of blew my mind a little bit, but it's a pretty good, interesting movie to watch. I liked it. I thought it was. There's a couple things I've watched over the years of Uber, right? So I watched the Uber TV show, which Super Pumped is what it was called, right? I think it was called Super Pumped. I might be calling something completely different. The Uber, but BlackBerry is one of those good business movies that like, there's some stuff there to pay attention to for sure.
Yeah. In fact, it's really funny you say that because I'm laughing inside. My best friend got rid of his BlackBerry a year ago and got an Apple phone. I said, you have a BlackBerry? We call them crackberries because there's nobody has them anymore because they've lost their market share. Steve Jobs made sure of that, but they were the only thing at one point in life in my business career.
Yeah, I think part of what put BlackBerry out of business in the movie, right? There's a lot of different things that put any company out of business. It's never one thing. But one of the things was scrambling and getting away from their core values when Jobs came out with the iPhone, when Jobs came out with the touch screen, when he came out with the original iPhone. The original iPhone didn't exist yet. So they were scrambling to change everything. They were scrambling to keep up with something that hadn't even happened yet, right? And then they put themselves out of business, which is getting away from core values, right? Like one of the things that destroyed them was sending their phones over to be manufactured, to be produced in China. And then them having to return, I'm trying to think of the name of the phone, but there's like 5 million phones or something crazy. They had to be returned to Verizon, and then Verizon sued them for like 500 million. And then like, but it's the difference between, think about this, Microsoft and Apple, right, were at it. And then Apple got a huge chunk of money based on the monopoly of Microsoft, right? But BlackBerry got nothing against Apple when Apple went and became, a somewhat monopoly, right? When it came to the phone world, obviously there's Android and Samsung as direct competitor. But at that point, right, it's interesting that like how different things move in that bigger world.
Yeah, we could talk about, I know that I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek, and I started with his first book, Start With Why, and he describes Steve Jobs and his brilliance. Before he told people what he did or how he did it, he told them why it was important to them. So his ability to talk to people and communicate a message was second to none. He was brilliant at that.
Look at the next wave of American businesses, right? Bezos creating Amazon, Jobs, what he did with Apple. But then you look at, the next waves. Like, what are those next waves? What are those next futures? I mean, that's something I'm always looking for. The industry we're blessed to be a part of, right, happened after 2012 with the Jobs Act, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of a little bit mind-blowing because now, for the first time, anybody who's watching our podcast, right, I'll, get you access to Money Shackles, the book, because fractionalized ownership is the future, right? The ability for you to own your own percentage of Apple before it's on the stock market, right? Angel investing, and that's not me personally. I'm talking about other businesses and companies out there. I invest constantly, right? But that fractionalized ownership in Apple or Microsoft or BlackBerry or those kind of things, that's, it's pretty incredible, right? And I think that's a beautiful thing that we talk about in the book is that ability for people to do that. And how much fun would it have been, though, to have been a part of any one of those, Amazon, BlackBerry, Uber, Apple, RADD, right? In its inception or its in beginnings, and to be able to follow the ride as an owner, not just as a consumer and a user, but as an owner. And I think Americans can own more businesses and parts of more businesses than ever before based on, that Jobs Act in 2012, which is pretty cool. It opened a multi-billion-dollar industry that didn't previously exist.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful part about America.
And I think what's really important is that if this person who's listening to us right now and they're a first-time listener, you just unpacked a few things at a level that I think we should just basically explain. You did talk about the accredited versus unaccredited investor, but we know that any person can open up a stock market account and invest in companies like Apple. They can have fractionalized ownership.
Anything they want to.
Right. But when it comes to certain vehicles for wealth creation inside of the world of real estate, President Obama opened up the access, and there are certain regulations that say this investment qualifies as a mostly accredited investors. So you got to have money, you have to have made it in order to make more. And
I mean, at the end of the day, 5% of America owns 99% of the wealth, right? And that's a little bit mind-blowing. And they have access, that 5% has access to unlimited amount of investments that the other 95% don't have access to.
Right. But Obama opened up the opportunity for certain real estate vehicles like we have here, where anybody, pretty much anybody, can play and participate at their level.
Because you don't have to buy a $5 million property when you don't have $5 million, but you can buy, 0.5% of a $5 million property. You can buy, 0.25%. You can buy, I've seen the lowest, I think it's $100, fractionalized ownership, all the way up to, I see, people doing $50,000 fractionalized ownership, which is really, at that point, limiting the amount of people that can invest into it. But I think the fractionalized ownership is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So those of you who are listening right now, fractionalized simply means you get to own
a piece of the pie.
You get to get a piece of the pie. And here at RADD, we're super excited about that because we're opening up opportunities for people. And your heart is, how can all Americans have equal access to be able to change things? Now, they have to take action. And I think Money Shackles is brilliant about that. You've got to think a little bit differently, educate yourself regularly, and then you have to take action and implement.
Yeah. I mean, one of my core philosophies has always been give the information. I think people should have access to information. Give as much knowledge, as much information as possible so people can go and be successful with their investing, successful with the real estate, right? But when I first started real estate education in 2008, you couldn't be a fractionalized owner, not in the way that we're talking about, right? And so it was very limited, on what you could and couldn't do. And so the world has changed dramatically. And so the education for me is, yes, I'll educate and train and develop on fractionalized ownership, but my belief is people take that knowledge and go and invest. And if some of that investment comes to RADD, that makes me happy because we're not just a trainer, a podcaster, a teacher, we're a reality, right? And I think that's the difference between a lot of trainers out there who go train and teach. They're not actually doing what they train. It's like the person who teaches personal development and has 7 divorces and a miserable relationship with their children. It's not exactly the person, and is struggling financially, is not exactly the person that should be teaching personal development.
Yeah, or the health coach who's 50 pounds overweight, which I say that with respect because there are certain people out there who have brilliant knowledge, but they're just not good examples of what they're doing. And when you combine great knowledge with also real example, and they're in alignment, and when that's what I love about RADD is the alignment between how you guys live, how you guys work your company, how do you guys, and I should say we, because I feel part of this company. There's just a real game changer here. And one of the things that, again, I don't think we've talked about this yet, is for a lot of people out there, because I have personally worked with so many people over years as a business consultant, and it always involves personal development, always. Build a better you, build a better business, right? But I don't think most people understand, because they want to get into real estate. They want to have the benefits of that. They don't realize that you don't have to go out and save up $500,000 to buy a home. You can actually be a passive investor.
That's a part of the lack of training and teaching in schools, right? Like I was on with a reporter yesterday, and we were talking about the financial literacy within elementary schools, right? And for me, like, there's only 2 things, and I could be wrong, maybe there's 3 things that every single person will deal with during their life, right? And one of them being finances, money, their entire life, right? Another one probably being their faith, right? Their entire life. A third one being their sexuality. They're gonna be involved in relationships their entire life, right? These are things that every single person will deal with their entire life, and those are things that that the correct type of education on each of those arenas. There's a time, there's a place, and some of that is for parents to decide and for parents to be a part of, but it is a part of the process. But if parents don't have financial literacy, how are they going to give their kids financial literacy? So we have to wrap up. We're at the end, but I always enjoy the journey with you, brother.
My pleasure.
Talk to you all soon. Hey, follow us, socials, right? Be a part of the conversation. Be a part of the Money Shackles conversation. I think it's a powerful part. Be a part of the Redefined American Dream conversation, and we'll talk to you soon.